Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chair of the Board of Directors of the National After School Association, Barb Roth.
Thank you. Welcome back. I hope it's been a good conference for all of you. Well, as we started our conference off together Monday morning, was that Monday morning? Was that just Monday morning? I don't know about you, but it feels like that was a long time ago. We've had an opportunity to learn, to talk with others, to network, to share. Many of you were presenters. Many of you met new friends. I've talked to several people who said they saw people they hadn't seen in a long, long time. So it's been a fun time to get together, kind of like a field family reunion, if you will. So I'm hoping that you all had a chance to meet new friends, and I'm hoping that you all have gone away with new information and new knowledge that will strengthen not only your programs, but will also strengthen you personally as a professional, and will strengthen your ability to go back home and share and educate others in your organization and in your communities, particularly those decision makers and policy makers in your communities. We hope that we've been able to share with you lots of data and information about program improvement as well as the importance of our field. We started off on Monday thinking about the past 25 years. Some of us dressed up in costumes from the 80s the other night and kind of reminisced, where were we 25 years ago when this organization got started? And today I'd like us to think about our future and where we're headed in the next 25 years. As you know, NAA has made great progress, the field has made great progress in the last 25 years. And I believe that this is just the beginning for us. I talked to you the other day about the fact that we were, as an organization, 25 years old, and much like human development, we had reached young adulthood, and now it's time for us to move forward into maturity and really going forward into the ability to bring others along with us, to grow and to develop our professionalism even further. So in our next 25 years, between now and when this organization is 50 years old, I believe we will become even more relevant than we are now. We will become stronger. We will become part of a larger family of networked organizations who all work to support children and their families and teens and their families in the out-of-school time and make the connection between out-of-school time and school time. I believe we will continue as a mature organization to make our mark even more significantly than we have already. As I did Monday, I'd like to share with you a couple of quotes of people who have been dreaming about the next 25 years. And actually, I have about 6 quotes, and in the interest of time, I'm going to share one that I found particularly important, and that's from Vince LaFontaine, one of our NAA board members, because Vince actually did the math, and in another 25 years, our 50th anniversary convention will be in the year 2038. And his hope is that at that convention, the President of the United States will come and will proclaim, we have achieved much over the past few decades through exciting education reforms, especially in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. And our students have now reclaimed the top ranking in the world. Since recognizing that children learn in different ways and at different times during the day, and embracing the efforts of after-school organizations, we have made incredible strides. We owe much to our nation's professionals dedicated to supporting the whole child before, during, and after school. I think much of that we could say today, and we will continue to be able to say that as we move forward in the next 25 years. So my charge to you is to continue to bring along our young professionals, some of you are our young professionals, and remind them that this is a field to stay in for a career, that the opportunities are endless, and that the impact we have in this field is truly significant for our country. I now have the great privilege of introducing our panel moderator for this morning's plenary session, and we have asked our panel to take on a big task today, answering the question, where do we go from here? To help them, I'd like to provide some context for how we got here in the first place. It's worth reminding ourselves that the debate over how children and youth should spend their non-school time has been going on since the second half of the 19th century, when philanthropic settlement houses stepped in to provide the children of immigrants with food, clothing, medical care, and help learning English. I know that sounds very familiar to some of you who are doing that very thing today. Starting in the 1940s, when women joined the workforce during the war, and again in the last 4 decades, when the economy dictated that moms and dads both worked, after school has undergone a period of significant expansion. And as demand for after-school programming has grown, so too has the pressure on our providers to improve quality. In 1994, the federal government broke with the past and began funding after school directly through the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program, which has been a focal point for evaluation and discussion ever since. We have come a long way, but there is still a long way to go. We are still contending with thorny issues, among them what types of outcomes we can expect from quality after-school programs and how to keep up with the demand in these times of tight budgets. Given how much change we've been through and how much work remains ahead of us, the question of the day is, where do we go from here? And it's a big one. Fortunately, we have an amazingly wonderful panel to be able to help answer this question. They have observed firsthand many of the changes that brought us to this point, and they have given a lot of thought to what the history of after school can teach us about our future. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, President of the Wallace Foundation, Will Miller, who will introduce our panel to you and help lead this discussion. Will has been the president of the Wallace Foundation since July 2011. He brings an unusual background combining leadership in business, civic revitalization, not-for-profits, and philanthropy. He has been the director of the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation and the National Building Museum. In his native Indiana, he helped lead innovative partnerships that achieved measurable results in strengthening public education, economic opportunity, and civic revitalization. Will currently serves on the board of Cummins, Inc., the Fortune 500 global manufacturer of engines and related technologies, and is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in Cambridge. Please welcome Will Miller.
Thank you, Barb, for that kind introduction, and it's an honor to be here with you. Let me first introduce my colleagues on the panel, all of whom have great experience in the field of after school. They bring varied perspectives as well, including those of a funder, a researcher, a consultant, and a provider. I'm going to keep their introduction short in order to maximize the amount of time we have to hear what they have to say, but I'll start on my far left, your right, with Willis Bright, who is a former director of youth programs at the Lilly Endowment here in Indianapolis and now president of Bright Vision, Inc. Terry Peterson is the national board chair of the After School Alliance and a senior consultant at the Mott Foundation. Karen Pittman is co-founder and CEO of the Forum for Youth Investment, which describes itself as an action tank, providing research tools and technical assistance. And Jane Quinn, who is a former member of the Wallace Foundation staff, now helps lead the Children's Aid Society, where she serves as vice president and director of the National Center for Community Schools. Please join me in welcoming the panelists. Okay, panel, Barb gave us a big assignment, and we only have about 50 minutes, so let's dive in. Barb stressed how the after-school field has evolved and grown. Let's take stock of the major developments that have shaped where we are today, starting with the state of the evidence on what makes after-school valuable and effective. Jane, what does the evidence tell us, especially about the link between quality and outcomes?
I think over the last 20 years, we've learned a lot about the importance of quality if we want to produce important outcomes that are going to help young people make it to productive adulthood. I think the first time we saw this showing up in the research literature was in some of Deborah Vandel's studies, where she emphasized that the kinds of outcomes that she was seeing from high quality programs were not, she wasn't seeing them in programs that were not of high quality. We'll get into the issue of what those kinds of outcomes are a little bit later, But I think we have at least 20 years of evidence now that if we want after school and out of school time programs, I'm including summer programming in that, if we want those programs to produce positive outcomes, we have to make sure that we are paying a lot of attention to quality. I think we also have kind of a negative lesson from the Mathematica evaluation a few years ago, where the evaluators really kind of chose programs randomly. They were not mature programs, and I think we saw that, and as we read the report, it was very painful to me reading the report and hearing about some of the kind of homework help type programs that really were not helpful. They were not providing much assistance, and they were often based on really poor homework assignments. So we have to really pay a lot of attention to the issue of quality, and I think that when we do, we see very positive outcomes, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Great. So Karen, given how important we know quality to be, based on the work of the Forum's Weichert Center for Youth Program Quality, what does quality consist of?
Well, I think the first thing that happened to move from Jane's summary of understanding the importance of quality, which meant that we had to decide that it mattered, and we had to decide that you could measure it, was moving from those kind of research studies in which people were going in and in some way sort of retroactively understanding, sorting programs from high into low, and then seeing if there was a difference. That's important research to do, and those meta-analyses were very important. But in order to actually infuse it into the work that we were doing, we had to go from being able to measure quality to demonstrating that quality is malleable and that quality is marketable. And by that I mean we can actually make changes in ways that your regular programs can afford to do. I think in this world, the most important thing that we've done, and is to skip ahead, I think the contribution that after school is going to make in this space is that because the things that we do in after school and youth programs are so diverse from a content perspective, from an activities perspective, was to bring in a definition of quality that was content neutral and that allowed us to really take what we know about child and youth development and operationalize it into a set of what Charles would call sort of point of service observations about what's happening between kids and adults in the structured environment that's been created. So basically what we know about quality follows Maslow's needs hierarchy, and all of us probably took Psych 101 at some point. So we start with safety and structure, and then we move up to make sure that that environment is actually welcoming and supportive. Then we look for actual opportunities for engagement in a variety of things that allow you to build skills and test those skills. And then you really want to look finally, if you go up to that self-actualization point, for opportunities for young people to make choices, make decisions, and actually be a part of the planning process. We do all of those things. Whatever the setting is, we're creating an environment in which learning happens. And what we know is that while we started with a conversation about time, and Jane and I both remember a matter of time, when we started with a conversation about the importance of just expanding and being responsible for more time, where we've moved with quality is understanding that when we really do create quality environments, we increase engagement in learning. When we increase engagement in learning, we actually are helping young people, we'll get to this in a minute, we're helping them build those skills and beliefs that are transferable into whatever they now want to learn from a content perspective. So what we've been able to do in really focusing on the connection between quality and building, demonstrating engagement and demonstrating the payoff of engagement in those transferable skills, which we still have too many names for. Grit, life skills, soft skills, 21st century skills. We need to land on some language, but we're beginning to actually be able to name them and see them. So moving from coming into programs to help them understand those standards, to be able to observe those, whether you're observing from peer or you're doing more high-stakes observations and evaluations. But the most important thing that I think we've been able to demonstrate is that when you're coming in to introduce quality, it changes the relationship between the frontline staff and the supervisors and the management. And that change in relationships is what makes quality sustainable. So you can come back 2 years later and you're still seeing the practices happen.
When your point about time is well taken, because there's also a good body of research that's simply expanding the amount of time.
Exactly.
does not produce the results you'd expect. It has to be time well spent, which is the theme of quality. So Terry, what steps can funders and providers take to ensure that quality is consistent across many types of programs?
First, the bad news. Even though we know, and you all work in this space of 3 to 6 or 2:30 to 6:30 at summers and cover when teachers may have work days, there is no one, no group, no agency in charge. So we here, you in this room, this panel and others, have to develop the systems for technical assistance, professional development, training, creating incentives for constant improvement. And so I would urge you to do 4 things. One is get involved in the citywide system efforts that Will and Wallace is so beautifully rolling out and expanding across America. If you don't have one of those, approach your city or county leaders, your United Way and some of your other colleagues and see if you could start one. And then go and ask Wallace, probably not money at first at least, but they have a lot of good knowledge capital that there could be very helpful. Again, since no one's in charge, you can't just stop at the local level. And state governments have a lot of influence on what happens. Transportation policy, standards, regulations, and even in some cases, funding. So I would urge you to get involved with your state after-school networks. There's 41 of those now across the country and 9 more growing. I don't know, do we have any state after-school network people here? If they are, could they stand up? Could you stand up? Thank you. I didn't necessarily want you to applaud them. I mean, I just want you to see them so you could ask them for help. Now they may not give you help because you think you love them, and you should. Then we also have to worry about the federal level. We can't have a lot of mixed voices when you're making policy in this environment in Washington. We need a common thread, common voices, a consensus. And so there I would urge you to work with the After School Alliance. And finally, you're here at NAA, but some of you aren't continuing members. And Gina said, for sure I had to mention, make sure you join the NAA. And I get a standing ovation for her. But you do need to be involved. NAA, local, state, and federal. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the reality. And don't be put off in a way because no one else is going to do our work. It's really a great opportunity for us here and your colleagues back home to define the quality, to do what Karen has just described, the way we know works. So please take advantage of that opportunity and challenge.
Thank you. So Willis, in Indianapolis, while you were at the Lilly Endowment, there was quite a bit of work on bringing people together to collaborate in this space. What can you tell us about what it takes to engage community stakeholders in this process?
Well, first of all, I think it takes what a lot of my colleagues have been talking about, and that is having programs that the people who run them know what they do. That you know what your individual programs can do, who they best serve, with what, and that you also have a fundamental understanding of what children and youth need, and therefore begin to isolate what it is you uniquely do and figure out what else exists within your community to complement that, such that if you don't do arts, if you don't do science, if you don't do math well, that you can then begin to link up with other entities in the community, whether they be other programs or universities. For example, here in Indianapolis, our Summer Youth Program Fund, we basically provided resources for the arts organizations, a program, the Algebra Project, that involved teenagers teaching younger kids how to do math, and they then served a plethora of community programs. In order to have that kind of self-analysis and then building collaborative programs that provide complementary skills, it helps if you have a funding community that demonstrates within itself the ability to coordinate and collaborate its funding. here in this particular community and in Phoenix, and we've worked with folks in Birmingham and a bunch of other places. You have funders coming together to say, hey, we will pool our dollars, still keep our own individual decision making, but provide dollars to make sure that the programs that exist in our community can have some support. And as we've done here and in some of the other communities, tied it in with technical assistance, with training, with quality standards, working with the after-school network and others, so that you have a much more comprehensive approach to delivery of service. Lastly, in order to begin to encourage collaboration and to convince funding entities, I think you each have to do, and you've all been doing glorious work, but this artificial demarcation between after school, out of school, and summer has to begin to be pushed away, because you're dealing in many cases with the same kids in some of the same environments, and really begin to say, how do we begin to serve young people wherever they are and bring informal things that you do in community programs into schools so that we have the best approaches to serving young people, and that will be convincing to funders at the local level, the state level, that you know what you're doing and that you're serving kids well, and that will then help bring resources. Just one last point about the resources. One of the things that I think many of you do out of your great dedication to young people is to have a philosophy you can serve everybody, and that's just not true. In order to have quality, you have to know who you can serve with what, and what are the limits to your service and limits to your growth, so that in fact, you are not basically trying to overreach and not serve anyone well with limited quality. Because there are resource crunches, and your boards and others have to be involved in determining who best you can serve with the resources you have.
And if you're part of a system, you can feel that the system as a whole is serving everybody, and therefore you don't have to, you can focus your organization.
That's exactly right.
So those tie together. Thank you. So policymakers want to know what results after-school programs can deliver. And as Karen mentioned, we have a problem in the field of agreeing even on how to describe the results, or a common set of language. So what does the evidence tell us it's reasonable to expect after-school programs to achieve, given that they're typically limited in the amount of time they have to work with children? Jane, do you want to start?
Well, I will start on the time thing, because I think that we have learned over the last 20 years that dosage really does make a difference. You know, when Karen and I were working on A Matter of Time 20 years ago, I was happy to discover, because you know the research literature was not all that robust at that time, and I was not a researcher going into this work. I'm a practitioner who uses research. So I was trolling through the research, and I found some work by a guy named Reginald Clark. Does anybody know this research? This is old. It came out in 1990.
Still good.
Came out in 1988.
Yeah.
But what Reg Clark said that, and he didn't say, he found this in the research literature, that he was looking at the issue of why it is that some low-income children do well in school while some other low-income children don't. And what he found was that the critical difference between the higher achieving children and the lower achieving children, they were all low income, was how those high achieving children were spending their out-of-school time. This was a great discovery for somebody who was trying to make the case for after-school and youth development programs. What he said was that young people needed to practice their academic skills in the non-school hours, and that they needed to participate in what he called high-yield learning activities 20 to 35 hours a week. So when I hear about after-school programs that are an hour a day or 3 to 6 hours a week, I say we need to work on dosage first of all, right? If we're going to get to outcomes, then we need to work on both the frequency and the duration of children's participation. Now, Reg Clark was not saying that children had to be in programs the 20 to 35 hours per week. He was saying they needed to participate in high-yield learning activities of the kind we've been describing. But if our programs can help children learn to read for pleasure, That is the single biggest gift that we can give young people. I think that came out in Reg's research, and I think it's come out over and over again. Okay, so that's really an important kind of cornerstone, I think, for thinking about outcomes, is making sure that we have quality and that we have adequate dosage. So what we've seen in the research literature over the last, in the evaluation literature in particular over the last 20 years, I'm going to start with Deborah Vandell. She did find when elementary age children participate in high quality after school programs that they have higher academic achievement than non-participants. They have better social development. They have better emotional development. And this may be my favorite of her outcomes, better work habits. And I think we are now seeing, I mean, I appreciate when Karen said grit and we all laughed. It was like, thank you, Paul Tuff. You know, Paul Tuff is on NPR. He's on TV. He's talking about the stuff that we have been talking about since the beginning of NAA and lots of other work. So I think that the social and emotional stuff is finally getting the respect that it deserves, and we've known that that's important for a long time. We also know, so those are some outcomes, right? Social, emotional, work habits, and academic achievement. Milbrey McLaughlin, looking at programs for teenagers, and again, looking at young people's participation in high-quality programs, she found that the young people who were participating in community programs that promote youth development, that they had higher education and career aspirations. Again, a wonderful, wonderful outcome. And then I would also cite LA's Best. The evaluation of LA's Best found, one of the many evaluations found that young people who had participated in elementary school in high quality programming, which LA's Best is famous for, had higher high school graduation rates. So I think that we can say a lot about what young people get out of these programs. We also know that young people, when we focus on this array of skills like leadership skills and service learning, attitudes about the importance of giving back to the community, when we focus on these outcomes in our programs, we see them showing up in our evaluations. So I think for us as practitioners, the important point is that we have to pay a lot of attention to inputs if we want to get particular outcomes. And we have to absolutely link inputs to outcomes. So that's, I'm going to stop there.
That's a good list.
We know a lot, and we did not know this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Karen, you want to add to it?
Yeah, I want to add to it and come at it from the other side, because everything that Jane just summarized is absolutely right. But one way to get out of a quandary of deciding what to name the things that we think are happening in after school and out of school programs, and go back to emphasize this connection between quality learning environments, engagement, and the development of sort of practical skills and beliefs that can be transferred into wherever you're going next, is to actually fast forward and look at the several studies that have been done asking employers what they're looking for, right? So the Partnership for 21st Century Skills with Corporate Voices for Working Families and the Conference Board surveyed over 400 employers of all sizes and across all industries. And because these things are so uneven, basically said, when you're looking at entry-level workers to come into jobs that either need a high school diploma, some sort of associate's degree or certificate, or a 4-year degree, what are you looking for? Now, of course, they were looking for basic reading comprehension skills and basic math skills, but the things that they said consistently were they were looking for problem-solving skills, work ethic, time management, et cetera, problem-solving, work ethic, teamwork, and communication skills. Asked then, when you think about the high school graduates that are coming in your door, how many of them have the skills that they need to really succeed in your entry-level jobs? The answer was only 6 out of 10. So a part of what this whole country has been doing is focusing on high school graduation. We have to really hear from the employment perspective. And you get the same data when you ask folks in higher ed. What are you looking for in your college students? So the conversation that we're all trying to get young people ready for, college and career readiness, gives us a wonderful opportunity to take the words and the competencies that higher education institutions and employers are saying they're not getting when kids have come all the way, they've done everything they're supposed to do and they've come all the way through the pipe. They're still not coming out with the skills that they need to succeed in those environments in which they basically aren't told what to do every 45 minutes. They have to think for themselves, they have to manage time, they have to learn to work in groups. It's not that we can't, because we should, do a better job of helping young people build those applied skills during the school day, but while we're working on unleashing the constraints of the school day, we need to take advantage of the fact that we have a lot more flexibility in the programs that we provide, and those skills are now being named. So we need to see employers and higher education institutions as our best friends, because they are giving a language and an urgency to the kind of skills that we think happen. The last thing that I'll say in this space in terms of defining outcomes and linking it back to engagement, we have been helping communities sort of leverage a tool that's already been out there, which has been offered by Gallup, the polling people. There's a poll that they call the Gallup Student Poll that schools can use for free, polls 5th through 12th graders. It's a very short poll, but very well researched, and they give you back 3 indices, whether young people are hopeful, engaged, and thriving. And thriving is a very basic level of thriving. But only half of young people come out hopeful. That's in that belief category.
Yeah.
If you don't believe you're going to be moving forward, that really affects everything from attainment to attachment. Only half are engaged, and engagement in school comes down like a stair step. For every year they're in school, they're less and less and less engaged. So the opportunities that we have in after-school and out-of-school programs to really bolster that engagement by allowing them to actually practice and use those skills. Again, it's not that we can't increase engagement in school, but the reality is, and this is some of Reed Larson's research, when he used beepers and had young people beeped every hour, and they wrote down both where they were, and then they were answering 2 questions because he was interested in intrinsic motivation, which is basically doing what you want to do because you're motivated to do it, not because somebody's telling you to do it, which ultimately is what we need to have sort of productive adults. What he found was that when he beeped young people and they were in class, they basically weren't using their heads and they weren't using their hearts. They weren't connected and they weren't paying attention, they weren't engaged. When he beeped them and they were with their friends, they weren't using their heads, but they were connected. When he beeped them and they were in sports programs, he saw higher levels of both. They were both, sort of using their heads and they were engaged using their hearts. He found the highest levels in these things that as a psychologist, he didn't even know what they were. He ended up calling them structured voluntary activities, activities that young people went to because they picked them, but they had some structure to them. We would call those after-school, out-of-school youth development. That's where he saw the highest level. That changed his career path because then when he said, well, how many young people are involved in those activities, he found it was under 25%. Again, this is not an indictment of school. It goes back to if we can really help, if we can really leverage the interest that employers have, that higher education institutions have, in helping young people build those competencies that they need to succeed in college and in careers, we can really start to put a spotlight on what it takes to create learning environments that really nurture those things. And that, those are changes that need to happen in school, and we'd love to actually see out-of-school and after-school programs beginning to be recognized for the innovation they've had in really helping to have high levels of engagement, high levels of motivation, and really building hope in young people.
That's good. So, Terry, you've emphasized the connection to the National After-School Association, but there's a wide range of program providers out here and funding models. So what's some practical advice on how to get connected if you're a provider to state and national efforts?
A couple ideas, and first, and really looking at this for the future, because that's sort of looking back and looking future, I'd say 3 areas. One is the collaboration that I covered. Collaborate with a local entity, state, and after-school alliance. The second one is funding. And sometimes we don't like to talk about that because we've been through the Great Recession. But let me tell you, I follow revenues at the state and local and federal level. In many communities and many state, revenues are up. And you should not be shy in working together and having different funding streams and groups involved is a key. Together, collaboratively, and with some of these other groups I mentioned, you should be pitching to your local mayor, school district, county council, state legislator, and Congress that you need more resources for quality programming and to serve more young people. Don't be shy. I had the pleasure of working with President Clinton and Governor Clinton, and he had a great line. He said, when they say it's not about money, it's about money. So, if there is money and you have a good idea and to improve the quality and access, don't be afraid to ask, but you're going to be far more effective if you do it together. Third and final point, and that is, I noticed at all the meetings, and I've had the great opportunity to work in this field quite a while and visit a lot of programs. I got to put this book together and with 100 authors. And what I have seen is what Karen mentioned. There is tremendous innovation going on in this field, after school, summers, weekends, for all age groups. But we don't share it with many people. We need to share what's working in two venues. One, share it with people who make decisions. Invite the United Way to your program. Invite the mayor, the school board, your local legislator, your local member of Congress. They don't know about what you're doing, and it's perfectly legitimate. Everybody else is doing it, and here you're actually doing terrific work. You should do it, and do it together. The second one, we need to share better among ourselves, and that's why being involved with NAA and these other groups, when you see requests for proposals to make a presentation, do it. I know it takes time in putting this book together. I know many of you, including me, hate writing. You hate analyzing data. You hate making presentations. But if you don't do it, I can tell you nobody else is going to do it. My mother used to say, don't hide your good ideas under a bushel basket. So please don't do that. Please help us share what you're learning with policymakers and with our peers.
Terry, you want to add?
Yes, I'd like to take it to another level. NAA is one national organization that is supporting and encouraging after-school programming. But then there's the National Summer Learning Association. There's community schools. There's the MOT network. There are overlaps in what these national intermediaries are doing. One of the things that I think NAA can do is to be aggressive in conversation with these other entities so that, one, you can articulate what is idiosyncratic about what you do as well as what is the same, so that that can be better communicated to local programs that are having to wrestle with that, as well as to state, national, and international funders. Two, getting in front of funding communities takes a little effort, but when you do it with the support of the national organization, I think that is helpful. The Council on Foundations, which is the membership organization for foundation, is now balkanized because a lot of the action is in the affinity groups. Grant makers for children, youth, and families, grant makers for educations, grant makers for effective organizations. Why can't NAA, Summer Learning Association, go to those affinity groups and say, we are more than willing to share what we know about this work for your conferences, for do webinars and other kinds of things, so that funders have a better understanding of both the whole as well as the discrete things that you do, and can be not only mobilized, but be in a better position to kind of fund the work that you're doing. So I agree with Terry, you can't wait for people to discover you. Right. You've got to go and say, this is what we can offer you in order to be able to help make better decisions, because funders are lazy. And when I say funders are lazy, I don't mean that to say they're sitting around eating bonbons all the time and all. No, but if they get too much confusion about all of this stuff, They just shut down, and unfortunately, and we were talking about this a while ago, 15 years ago, there were about 8 or 9 large foundations that met separately who had youth development as an agenda. Now, there are maybe 1 or 2. But there are still foundations that are focusing on issues, teen pregnancy, go to college, and those kind of things. And I think what has to be done is an articulation of the work that's done that encourages more focus on you as an overall area of informal educators, informal teachers, informal service group folks, rather than feeling that you've got to push what you do under a label of pregnancy prevention or something like that, which doesn't always fit. So one, reaching out to your other national and local intermediaries. One, getting in front of funders as a collective by starting with some of the national organizations and groups such as the family foundations, because that's where a lot of the money is going to be. Corporate foundations, that's where some of the resources are and will be, and I think that it'll increase your opportunities to convince people that you do work of value, that it is meaningful, and that you're helping produce good citizens, good employees, entrepreneurs, and people who will make a contribution to making a democratic society be able to continue.
But you got to connect the dots for
You got to
the
connect the
funders.
dots.
That's good. In a moment, we're going to take some questions from the microphones if anybody wants to line up or move towards one. But while we're waiting for a question from the audience, I'd like, in a sentence from each of our panelists, to know what we don't know about after school that if we knew it would allow the field to advance. What are your ideas?
So I think one kind of study, and I do want to acknowledge how much we have learned, but I think we're missing some economic data on the social return on investment. When we look at programs that are producing these very positive outcomes, I think we need to be able to make for policymakers a policy-relevant argument about the social return on investment.
So more cost benefit.
So I would say more cost benefit. I saw in getting ready for this panel in a document from NIOST that there is at least one study that showed that for every $1 invested in after school, there was a $3 return on investment. I suspect it's higher than that, but that's good. But I think we need to probably build a base of evidence around cost benefit and social return on investment.
Great. Karen?
I'm going to take it down to the local level and say that I think for us to get to the next place we need to be, we need to make a push to consistently have data at the student level that allows us to understand how young people are moving through time between school and after school, lets us understand the connection between whether they're in a quality school environment and a quality out of school environment, lets us measure that engagement level that results from the combination of those things, and then see whether it's getting us the skills that help us to attribute to whatever outcome area we're looking at. So I think for us to get to the next level, we really have to come from defining and documenting what we do as a system to actually being able to trace how young people are weaving their way back and forth between school and the various things that we call after school, out of school, summer.
So how to take it to the individual.
Yep.
Right, Terry?
I agree with both of you, but I get concerned because some of these studies get done easily because then you look just at math and reading test scores. And while they're important, the skills you have so beautifully laid out, Karen and Jane, often get missed in these studies. So I would, my quotation mark or whatever I put on it, or a footnote, would be, how do you do what you said and make sure we're really measuring skills, attitudes, aptitudes, interests that really end up helping young people graduate and be workforce and career ready and responsible citizens. And people hate to do that because it's complicated. But that's the real life, and that's the space that quality programs work on well, and we do well. So while doing the study, don't just do it simply.
So we also need to know what portfolio of measurements
exactly
would be the right one.
Melissa?
I'll just go back to the theme that I've been speaking to, and that is that people need to design better and more effective partnerships, and to then collectively be able to analyze the mountains of data that they're all accumulating to let various funding and other constituencies know what it is you're achieving.
Great. So we do have time for a few questions from the floor.
Great.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Gretchen Yeager, and I represent both Champions Before and After School Programming and also represent the board of the National After School Association. In our opening session, we learned how many young people were continuing to enter the field, and I was very, very encouraged by that. And I'm wondering what single piece of advice you have for young people entering the field. Thank you.
Advice for people entering the after-school field.
Don't all do it once. All right.
Okay.
Oh, go.
Okay.
Go.
You know, I often identify myself as a youth worker. I want young people coming into the field to know how, not only how important this work is, but how much we know and, you know, how much the field has learned. So I want them to know that we have a body of knowledge that they're building on and that we are going to support them in their practice. And I hope that we can back that up. But I think it's important to support the practice of our young workers. We talk at Children's Aid about the twin pillars of quality, and that is that we provide materials that are the best available enrichment. We haven't even talked about the word enrichment at this table, but I want young workers to know what we mean by enrichment, that we're talking about exposure and experience and engagement. I want them to be supported in their practice with good materials, and I want them to be supported in their practice by a whole by a system of support that starts with orientation, that includes on-site coaching. I think that point of service coaching is very, very important, and that we will provide them with a career ladder or a career lattice, because there are a lot of things that you can do from the position of a youth worker that young youth workers may not even have thought about. So I think that we have a responsibility as practitioners and as experienced practitioners to share what we know about the possible career paths, because we want young people to be thinking not just about a job, but about a career.
So to turn that into advice, though, the other side of the coin is somebody entering the field could be proactive and go to websites, look up the research, understand what is known as a way of taking responsibility for their own development to complement what you're advocating.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of work going on, certification and other kinds of things, to give people the tools they need to become effective providers of service. But I think that there's a task, both the national organization and we who are advocates, is to get to the United Ways, to get to funding entities, and to particularly to state and federal policymakers to make it legitimate to have a livable wage if you are working with children and youth.
Amen.
We cannot ask people to serve kids and take a vow of poverty. And because why get certified and get a master's degree or get a PhD and then be stuck with making $15,000 a year? And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not by much. So I think accompanying the quality standards and programs, the certifications to help build professionally skilled people, we also have to have a pool of resources that build those capacities, but also have salaries that allow people to truly see that with increased knowledge and skills that you can even be a direct service youth worker, not have to go to management in order to be able to have a wage so that your children can go to college as well as other people.
Another question?
Yes, I'm David Klinkos, from the president of the After School Coalition of Indianapolis, and I want to thank the NAA for coming to Indianapolis. It's been a wonderful thing for the city and a wonderful thing, I hope, for all our visitors. At the same time, I know many times we look at the after school, and I always see a little tension in that. The tension between let's get everybody ready and keep them in school and move on and that, but we also have to think of they are children too. And I was wondering what part play plays in it and recreation, and if somebody would address that in terms of the learning part of this, please.
Karen?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that we really have a responsibility to do when we talk about creating environments for learning and engagement is being much clearer about what those environments look like and what the role of play is, and learning and being in teams and making decisions about what it is that you want to focus on. And so we know that. We know that that's what we do. There's a huge amount that we can do to really define, not by program name, but really define the space that we're talking about in terms of the settings where it can happen, in terms of the kinds of activities that we want to see happening inside of those settings, and then lastly connecting it to content, whether that content is the arts, it's a vocational focus, but we're coming at this first from really making sure that we're creating environments in which we respect creativity, we respect play, we respect innovation, we're giving young people chances to explore and chances to build expertise, and both of those have to be happening. That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the scaffolding of high-quality environments. It's allowing all those things to happen.
Okay, one last question.
Hello, my name's Joan Altabelli, and I'm here with my staff from Extended Care for Kids at Austin, Texas, and also represent the Texas After School Association. What we've been noticing is, on a local level, some competition among service providers for schools, kids, programs, resources, and then also nationally, like the partnerships with Mott and other organizations, really feeling like each group wants to be the best, wants to be the go-to, wants to be in charge of advocacy in a state. And I'm just wondering, how can we bring all of the people with basically the same mission together? My philosophy is there's enough kids to go around for everyone. There's underserved kids. Right. So how can we make a national platform that says we're in this together?
So what's the key to collaboration?
Well, I think you have to think of it in the levels that I mentioned, is that because we are a federal government of the people and for the people, you have to think of collaboration at the local level. How can you make that happen? How can you, and Wallace's work and others is terrific, and we need to learn from that. We need to have collaboration at the state level, and that's why I mentioned the State After School Network that Mott is heavily involved in, and Wallace helps, and others, and Noyce and Lilly. And we have to have collaboration at the national level, and then we have to have collaboration among local, state, and federal. I don't think you're going to get, just like one uniform voice. I'd love that, because what Willis said is really important. I've worked in the governor's office. I've worked in the Secretary of Education's office, and when people come in with different voices and different ideas, even though they're similar, you almost do more harm than good. You've got to get your act together. You can argue before you go outside at the local, state, and federal level, but you've got to have your act together when you go out and talk with others. And I don't know if that's what you're saying. And it's not easy to do, because we have, as I said, no one's in charge. So we have to keep working at this. And I think following the field like some of you have for a long time, we are making progress, but we have to make a much more. And when you see something that seems disjointed and disconnected, approach those groups, and people say, come on, can we get together and work on this?
Jane?
I wanted to introduce a word that I heard recently. That's a word called co-opetition. Have you heard that? And when I heard that word, it resonated for me, because I do think that we have to expect a certain amount of competition and maybe even embrace it. But we have to cooperate even so.
Yes.
So I've accepted that that's the reality that I live in. But I think that within that context, we have to also recognize a couple of other issues that I think have arisen in the field. I think that when you say that we're competing for the same kids, often practitioners are competing for the kids who are easy to serve. And policymakers have contributed to this, I think, unintentionally. I think this is an unintended consequence of some of the efforts to increase the dosage.
Yeah.
So if you have a funding requirement that you're going to have to give back money if you don't have 75% participation, and I've actually seen this happen in some places, then you're going to go to serve the kids who are easier to serve.
Yes.
So I think from a policy and funding perspective, it's important for us to build into requests for proposals some competitive advantage for programs that are going to reverse cream, if you will. That is to serve, because we know from the research that the children who benefit the most from participation in high quality after school and out of school time programs are the children who are at the highest risk. But they're not the easiest children to recruit and to retain in our programs. So I think that you've really put your finger on something that I think is an emerging issue in the field, kind of an issue that we need to pay attention to as practitioners, policymakers, and funders. So thank you.
And if I could jump in to add one point to that, the strategy that we have found really gets at this sort of, we should be collaborating, but we often feel that we're competing, is literally to step back and get everyone that you invite into the room to honestly locate themselves in the big picture. And you have to paint the picture big enough that no one organization is audacious enough to say that they can cover the whole thing. So at the moment in which you really you don't just say we have a vision that's on a slide, but you really start to quantify that vision in terms of the number of young people, how you divide those young people into different populations, whether that's by geography, it's by difficulty to reach them, the kind of thing by age, the kind of things that you want to be offering, the capacities that the different organizations need to have. That could be partnerships with other organizations like schools, et cetera. Once you really specify at the community level what it is that we need to have to make sure all young people have these opportunities, no one organization can paint that picture. At that point, what we find consistently is that organizations are then more honest about coming up to say where they really do have their priorities, where they have stepped in because they saw gaps, but if somebody could honestly tell them somebody else would step into that space and partner with them, they'd be ready to partner, and where they're really just faking it. They're doing things that they shouldn't be doing, because what happens when you don't have that, and when funders don't demand that the community has that picture so that we can honestly say, everybody's saying that they're full, but we're only serving 15% of our kids.
Right.
Or everybody's really telling us that, they've got great enrollments, but when we show up, the rooms are half empty. We have to be able to be honest, and the most important thing that we can do with these coalitions is to have them actually begin to operate with data, not just about how well the kids are doing and how many young people are in need of the services, but actual data about the direct service programs, and then data about all of those coalitions and networks and initiatives that are trying to raise the money, bring it in, argue that they're the best. They have to be working together. So there's a set of things that we have to do, but the more we are very transparent about we're clear about what needs to be done, we're defining what needs to be done at the community level, and then we really are making sure that as a community, we're bringing funders along to not allow a funder to fund something because they got a great proposal without asking, A, how many kids in this community is this actually going to serve? What's the need? And B, is there somebody else who could be serving them better?
Well, to that end, the funders and the providers have to be in partnership and have to trust one another so that you don't have what happens too often, either yielding to the best proposal, yielding to the best board, as opposed to who's really doing the work. it's also an understanding of the various roles that foundations can play. Community foundations are not simply money sources, but they can convene.
Right.
Funder collaboratives can convene. United Ways can convene and bring people together to say, what is it that we're trying to do as a community so that we can better utilize all of our resources, financial, human resource, and policy-wise, and help give some leadership to this kind of more effective service delivery.
Well, that's a good note to
Thank
end
you.
on.
I'm going to do that. And I thank you for the new word. It goes well with my word, problatunity.
So thank you. We're just a few minutes over our time. I want to thank the panelists and put in one commercial plug. There is a lot of research and practice guides on how to build citywide systems that do a lot of the things that have been discussed here today on the Wallace Foundation website, available to everyone in this room. If it would be helpful to you, I'd encourage you to look that up. But thank you, panelists, for your contributions this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. Can we have one more round of applause for our panel and for the moderator, Will? Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Roderick Wheeler to join me on stage. I think, there you are. Oh, I thought you were over here. I saw you. Thank you. Roderick is our representative from the Indianapolis Foundation, who has sponsored this event and this panel this morning, our closing plenary. So I'd invite Roderick to say just a couple of words.
Then turn it back over to you. Thanks. Thanks, Barb. Good afternoon. How did you guys enjoy the wonderful city of Indianapolis? Yay. My name is Roderick Wheeler, and I am a grants officer for the Indianapolis Foundation, a CICF affiliate, and we are so pleased to sponsor this event and say thank you to coming to our wonderful city, and we hope that you come back. We want you to take advantage of the site visits that follow this event. We're also sponsoring those. I hope you had a chance to see our wonderful, beautiful city amenities, but now you get to see our wonderful, outstanding school programs. So please take advantage of those. Do we have any, at this time, at this event, do we have any local host committee members? If we do, please stand. Indianapolis is called many things, Circle City. The greatest spectacle on earth is here in the Indy 500. But clearly, I think we're building a name, and our local host committee is helping add to this name as the host capital of the world after doing the Super Bowl and now doing the National After School Association Conference, 25th Anniversary Conference. So thank you, host committee, for being ambassadors for the conference and ambassadors for the city. You got the chance to witness our Hoosier hospitality. With that, I will turn it back over to Barb as we have a wonderful opportunity to celebrate one of our own. And the Indianapolis Foundation is pleased to be the sponsor of this event because it's serendipitous, if you will, that the Indianapolis Foundation provided the first grant that kind of launched this, the purpose of why we're going to celebrate an individual in just a moment. So thank you. Enjoy our city. Come back. We love you. Please do not stay away. Come back.
And now Roderick and I have the very great honor and pleasure of announcing our annual Flame of Inspiration Award winner this year. As you may remember from last year, our Flame of Inspiration is an award that the NAA gives to honor someone's career in our field and their contributions to our field and specifically to NAA. Our award winner tonight, as I review this person's resume, the word that I found the most amazing was the word founder. This person helped actually found the National After School Association, which was at that time called the National School Age Care Association, and was indeed our president from 1995 to 1999. She founded Voices for Children. She founded the Vivian Smith Teen Parenting House, and she founded and she was the co-writer of our Code of Ethics, which we still use today for our field. She helped found the Indiana Youth Pro Association, which you heard about earlier, and the Indiana School Age Consortium. She has been a powerhouse and a power player in our field for more years than we will count here, and has indeed personally and professionally made contributions probably beyond any of us in this room. And it is very, very serendipitous that she is actually a local person. So with all of that, we would very much like to invite Ellen Klippinger to come on stage and receive her award. Congratulations. So well deserved.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
Well, I do, but I think he wants a picture.
Oh, a picture first. There you go. Thank you.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
So the stage is yours for a moment.
Thank you. You hold on to that.
You hold on.
Oh, I'm honored. I'm honored, and I'm humbled. And I promised myself I would hold my own and not get all choked up. But you know, there were three of us who sat at coffee one day some 30 years ago. We were teachers at Ivy Tech Community College, and just enjoying that cup of coffee that you need before you go in to teach that next Shakespeare class or whatever it is. And one of our teachers said, I have a problem. I have been divorced. I have 2 school-age boys. I have no place to put them after school, and I have to work. And that was the scene here in the late 70s and early 80s. Well, guess what? I was on the board at my child's school, and her children happened to attend that school. Hey, there are empty classrooms. What? What a novel idea. Let us use those empty classrooms. The principal let us run a needs assessment survey. The needs assessment survey said parents wanted a program. Not only did they want a program after school, they wanted it in the morning. They wanted it one day a week. Whoa, I was not prepared for that. And you know what? They were willing to pay 25 cents an hour. Shock. It was not going to be a babysitting service. Didn't they know we were going to do all these wonderful social, emotional, enrichment, all these things for 50 cents or 25 cents an hour? Well, and then along came the Indianapolis Foundation, and Mr. Chapman, he sat, he listened, he said, I like your idea. He shepherded us through the process. And about 2 months later, at 9 o'clock at night, do you ever call your recipients at 9 o'clock at night, Roderick? 9 o'clock at night, I got the phone call, your proposal has been funded. $10,000. Whoa, was that a lot of money at that time? We were on our way. Our program was called At Your School Child Services. That's too long. The parents said it'll be called AYS, and yes, it is today. And I just want to say it was serendipitous. The superintendent of schools, I knew him. I had done my student teaching, not in the elementary grades, but in high school. He invited us in, and he had gray hair at the time, which becomes familiar for a few years. But anyway, the gray hair and his hands going like this, and he said, that's the answer to the principals who call me up every day and say, I don't know what to do with these kids on our playgrounds. And Dr. Kaup paved the way, along with the Indianapolis Foundation, the principal at our school, and that's how we were born. It's all about relationships. And I have to read a quote that I found because the few other groups that I want to recognize really center around this quote. It's anonymous, but these words are important. Pay attention. The first 6 words, I admit I made a mistake. The next 5 words, you did a great job. 4 words, what is your opinion? 3 words, if you please. 2 words, thank you. And the last word, we. I'm an English teacher, as you know, and those words resonate for the relationships that have inspired me. And the first we that I have to admit to is this wonderful man I married. He's right down here. And everyone needs a supporter. You know, the whisper in the ear, you can do it, Ellen. The hug every day when one goes to work. And it's important. And we had to have 2 wonderful children. And my son is sitting right up here. My daughter, oh no, I did. Oh, well, okay. Do you know that my son and daughter wrote the very first grant that had to be written by youth, vetted by youth for community service? And I believe community service is a foundation of every single program that we need to run. Jonathan, you have been a blessing. And now the groups, my staff, I can't see very well, but I know that they're out there. I want to say thank you. I see them waving, all of them. I've made mistakes, and my board should know I made a mistake with the IRS. I didn't file the papers the first year, and I had to call them up. I think they called me, actually, and said, where are these papers? I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. Board members who are right down here, we've never had a letter or a call from the IRS since. So be assured. So it's taken a wonderful group of people who are staff, program and administrators, a board that understands, gives opinions, and listens to opinions. The Indiana Youth Pro Association. And I want the association members of NAA to stand. Any association member that's out here, Kansas, Kentucky, New Jersey, just stand up. Be recognized. Be recognized. Stand up. You are important. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Youth Pro vetted the competencies, and we honored those credentialed people. The question was, what do you want out of your youth workers? You want people who understand what they are doing. They can come from all walks of life, but if they don't understand how to communicate, how to be a part of a team, where child development plays, they're not, and I do believe they need a higher wage. I'll go after that one. Nationally, higher wage. Let's clap for that. Nationally, I want to recognize the National Institute on Out-of-School Time. They have provided the research that we have needed all these years. Ellen Gannett has been at the forefront for many years. She was our speaker yesterday, and she and Susan O'Connor, are you here? You two stand. Way in the back, Susan. Do you know, NAA, that Susan O'Connor vetted those standards across this country? And those standards were a gift to NAA in 1997, I do believe. It should be in our records. Without those, we would not have the foundation for quality. The ASK tool, the way to improve what we do in our programs. And lastly, every single person in this room, Denise, you stand. Anyone who has been associated in the past with NAA, please stand up, because it's the we. Ellen, stand up. Anybody that has been a part of the board, yes. You see, yes, back in the back. It's the we of yesterday, it's the we of today, and it's the we of tomorrow, because we are here to help all those children, and we can do it by cooperating, remembering where we've come from, because we're strong. We've laid the foundation. You said it right, Barb. We've laid the foundation, and we have a wonderful, wonderful place to go. My last words are a paraphrase from none other than William Shakespeare. I can no other words speaketh except to say thanks, thanks, and more thanks to all of you for being this year's recipient. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're great. You're great.
I'll take my glasses.
Okay. And don't forget your flowers.
Yes.
We should all do so well. And with this, I'm going to turn it back over to our Executive Director, Gina Warner.
Okay, the clock is almost ticked on 25 years. We're marking it down. I do want to recognize and let everyone know, just as Ellen served as board chair of NAA, we had another special individual who served as board chair of NAA actually from 2002 to 2007, and you see his picture on the screen. His name is Richard Murphy. When I think back to the words of our opening speaker on Monday, Chef Jeff Henderson, he talked about how his life had been turned around because others who believed in him and believed in the power of his potential. Richard was one who always believed in, worked for, and fought for the power of potential in young people. And I'm so happy to announce that at next year's conference, not only will we have a Flame of Inspiration Award, we will also have the first ever Richard Murphy NAA Power of Potential Award that we will award to a young person entering the after-school field. So happy to be able to say that. Okay, and I sense that the audience is losing. It's no fun leaving. It's no fun to be the last person. And we've all seen the weather, and we know that when it comes to NAA, the threat of a tornado is not an idle threat. We've had experience with that. But what I want to take just a brief amount of time right now, because this is part of our annual meeting, to do our roll call of states. So when you hear your state's name, please let us know that you're here. Now let me say in advance, some of you will not hear your state's name. If you don't, that means that we welcome a discussion with you about how you could become an NAA state affiliate. So with no further ado, give it up, California. All right. Colorado. Connecticut. All right. Florida. Illinois. Iowa. Thank you. Maryland. Oh, somebody, please, come on. Massachusetts. This one I'm counting on. They have props. Michigan. All right. Minnesota. Missouri. Nebraska. Nevada. All right, you ends. New Jersey. Yeah, thank you. New York. Ohio. Oklahoma, Oregon. I see you back there, Beth. Come on. I know it's the end of a long 3 days. There you go. Pennsylvania, Rhode Island. I know they're small, but you know. South Dakota, Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas, right? Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming, and last but not least, our wonderful, wonderful host from the great state of Indiana. Thank you. I am pleased as the Executive Director to announce that the State of the Association is strong. It is growing. In just the last 3 months, our membership has increased by 25%. That's significant. That's huge. We are poised to lead into the next 25 years. Let me see if I get these right. In a spirit of cooperation, seeking to solve every opportunity that comes our way. All right, I have some great announcements to make as we're getting ready to wrap it up. The first is the drawing winner for a 3-night hotel stay for our 2014 annual convention, and that is Mary Park. Mary is with Project Success of Vermilion County. So Mary will be spending 3 nights in New York City next year, and our grand prize winner, who will be receiving a free full convention registration plus a 3-night hotel, Linda Durrell of Afternoons Rock in Indiana. So congratulations to the 2 of you. Congratulations to those who I guess are the most fit people within our association. You see their names. The winners of our 5K run, Chad Webb, our first place male, and Eileen Murphy Swift, appropriate name, I guess, are the winner in our female category. Last but not least, you heard us talk about it. Looking ahead, where will we be next year? New York City. We want you all to join us. As you're leaving, there will be some wonderful footage from the New York City Convention and Visitors Bureau on the screen, welcoming us all to the Big Apple. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you've had a wonderful time, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you.